Welcome to our summer online event, A Home to Heal, Finding Stability at Denver Rescue Mission. I'm Alexa Gagne, the Director of Marketing and Communications here at the Mission. We have heard directly from you, our faithful supporters, that you enjoy learning about our programs at the Mission and the stories of changed lives. With your feedback, we have developed this online event to focus on just that, our year-long transitional and rehabilitation programs. These programs provide a place for people to find healing and stability. Before I introduce our presenters, I want to mention that if you are participating in this event live, we invite you to submit your questions in the chat feature. Our team will answer your questions throughout the program. If you're watching this program recorded, you can also follow along with the chat playback. Now, I want to introduce our staff joining us today. Jonathan Swady is our Director of Residential Programs, overseeing both the STAR Transitional Program and the New Life Program staff and daily support. Thank you for being here, Jonathan.
My pleasure.
We also have Amanda Dwyer. She serves as the case manager for the New Life Program and previously for the STAR Transitional Program, working with participants one-on-one to help meet their goals for self-sufficiency. Thank you for being here, Amanda.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
John, I wondered if you could start us off with an overview of the STAR Transitional Program and who the program serves.
STAR Transitional Housing Program is a one-year program here housed at the Crossing. Families and individuals who meet our financial requirements can live here for a year and get counseling, case management, workshops, and other resources to support them towards the goal of being self-sufficient and finding affordable housing. It is a fee-based program where they pay a monthly fee ranging between $600 and $680 a month. They are given a large hotel room for themselves or their family. There is also a cafeteria on site as well where we provide food that could either take food stamps or a pretty small fee, such as a family of 5 could live and get fed there 7 days a week, three meals a day for around $120. The program's real big goal is how do we get you into sustainable housing that's going to be a place where there's not going to be as many barriers that they won't have to leave, and also figure out what's kept them from having success in the past. Was it a felony? Was it evictions? Was it just bad employment? And our case management team really works side by side, creating goals with them, working on a treatment plan, saying like, how do we get you to that next step so your life will be just much more successful and happy.
Thank you, John. That's really helpful to hear that overview. Now, Amanda, I wondered if you could give us an overview of the New Life Program and how it's different from the STAR program.
Yeah, so the New Life Program has similar goals of helping our participants achieve self-sufficiency, but it does have some key differences. The New Life Program is a free program for men in our community. And so our goal there is to help them kind of gain whole life recovery. So we do that by addressing their work-based program. So they are assigned a work readiness on our facility where they work in our maintenance, our custodial, our kitchen, and gain real-life job skills. So we want to help them learn the skills to interact with staff, peers, supervisors, so that they can maintain and obtain employment once they leave here. We do that through work readiness classes, resume building, career skills, as well as life skills that address budgeting, finances, and group and individual counseling. They meet with a case manager and chaplain one-on-one every other week to address their personal goals as well as their spiritual and community goals. So we try to kind of have reached the men where they're at, help them get their IDs, deal with legal barriers, credit, to help them obtain employment and housing post-program. About 92% of our men are self-reporting having an addiction problem with drugs or alcohol, and so our program really works to address that barrier as well and help them pursue sobriety and healing there.
Thank you for that explanation, Amanda. That's really helpful to see the difference between both programs. And they both are housed over at the Crossing, which is our residential facility. John, right now the New Life program looks a little bit different. If you could just tell us maybe some of the events of the last few months and how your staff and our participants are navigating through that.
Back during President's Day weekend, we were having record-breaking iced cold temperatures here in Denver. And the downside to that was on President's Day Eve, the temperatures froze. The fourth floor pipe in our tower where we house the New Life program and some of our STAR rooms. The pipe broke and cascading water went through the facility and made it not functional for the time being. Hopefully we'll be back there this fall. So in the middle of the night to midnight, our vice presidents had to come out here, get buses and shuttle our men to a Best Western for the time being, while the rest of our staff were trying to find another location that we could house our program, because we had men who were in the middle of their substance abuse recovery program who really wanted to complete, and we wanted to make sure we had a facility to do that for them. So we contracted with the DoubleTree down the street that we already had a relationship with, and they were gracious enough to provide a block of rooms, and we were renting out their conference rooms, so all of their classes, their counseling, case management, everything is currently being housed at the DoubleTree outside of their work readiness back here at the crossing. The men are taking it in stride. They were saying, we're used to being, forced out of our place of location homes, and they're just super grateful for just the rescue mission stepping in and saying, hey, we're not going to give up on you just because we had this big crisis. And so we are kind of taking it one day at a time, but right now things are moving pretty smoothly.
Wow, you and your team have handled this crisis just amazingly, and just being able to continue serving the men at the core, which is most important. It's been amazing to see that. So you guys are awesome, especially in the middle of a pandemic. So that leads me to my next question for Amanda. What are we seeing right now? We're still in the pandemic, and the economic environment has changed a little bit. How has that impacted the men in the New Life program?
Yeah, it has had an impact. Our program did with the pandemic, and with our participants' comfort level, entering the community during that, we did have about a pause on our program, so it did stop that for a little while. But once we restarted and had that expectation of having them obtain employment, they were able to do so. So a lot of our participants are the essential workers in our community, so they work in restaurants, in retail, construction. And even though there's some slowing down, they're still able to get jobs that are paying in that $17 to $20 an hour range. Even in the midst of everything that is going on, our participants are able, once they enter that job search phase, to obtain employment usually within 2 weeks. And usually they pay a fairly livable wage. The main barrier that we found is that housing component. So while they're able to get a job that pays well, they're not able to find housing that is affordable. So most of our men have to leave and enter either a roommate situation, sober living, or an affordable housing community. So the job market's been pretty stable for them. It's more, what does it look like post-program? Where am I gonna find housing that I can afford?
Thank you for that, Amanda. And so, John, how about in the STAR Transitional Program? Is the rental market and the job market affecting those families and individuals there?
Definitely. I think the job market, because again, we're in a pandemic, childcare has been a big concern. Being able to afford childcare if someone in your household is also vulnerable population, being able to, did you feel comfortable going to work, with potential bringing it back to someone who's living with you, like your grandmother, your aunt, or a child with a fragile disease. Also, the rental market still, even though we've seen prices drop in Denver a slight percentage, it's still not significant enough that makes things really affordable for our participants. The other hard part is it's just a competition. So let's say there is an affordable apartment for maybe $1,100 a month, and our family at STAR is applying for it, but they might have had a history of eviction or bad credit, just some past choices that they moved away from. They're going to get passed by someone else who is young, out of college, with a job, who doesn't have that on their history as well. So it's still a very competitive market, especially for those affordable places that everyone wants, because it's not just our individuals who have a little bit of lower income. Everyone wants that cheap apartment.
Of course. And how does your team prepare the families to go into these rental situations?
Well, we start talking about housing, especially in STAR, right off the bat, trying to figure out their goals and also help them realize what's realistic. People want the townhouse or the 4-bedroom home, where we can say, like, realistically in Denver proper, you're not going to find that. You might be able to find a larger place, more out in the suburbs, maybe more of a bus, ride or longer drive to your job, but that's where you might find larger places. So helping them realize like what are those tangible goals that they can actually do, and also try to figure out what are the barriers. Is it like, do you need a better job? Do you need to be put on some wait lists or housing lists as soon as you get on here for affordable housing? Do you need to kind of rethink of what city do you live in? Sometimes we have hard conversation like, you have a lot of family support in Arkansas and Alabama where it's cheaper to live. Like, is it realistic? Like, maybe our plan here is stay here, save some money to do a move somewhere else that's going to be better for you overall, not just because it's cheaper housing, but you'll have more community.
Thank you for explaining that. That's really helpful to know. Can you share a little bit more about our families and individuals in STAR, the challenges they've experienced through the pandemic?
Yeah, it's been a difficult time. I think there was a lot of fear when we first started, and no one knew what was going on. And a lot of our participants are the essential workers, so they were the ones called to work 40, 50 hours a week minimum during this to kind of help the rest of us function in society. They're working at Walmart, they're driving at Amazon. But at the same time, they had their kids at home. And who's going to watch the kids doing remote learning? A lot of our participants don't have jobs they can do remotely. And so it was difficult for them trying to navigate who's going to watch their children. There were some programs and our case managers connected them for some free, affordable childcare, but that was few and far between. And also, again, back to their comfort level of people being exposed. And at that point, we didn't know if children could get it or not. Other difficult parts were restaurants dropped dramatically in employment hours. And so they would have to go look for new jobs. And so that was also another tricky thing for them is, their steady income, their guaranteed income was gone. And so we kind of made some changes to program policies and we're able to just assist and help them in that process so they can afford to continue to live here at the crossing. Just because we took in consideration, like, this is not of their doing, they've been following the program, they want to work, it's just their industry is gone. And it just takes time to corner that and figure out what new skills do I need to, what other industries will be flexible with my childcare schedule and things like that.
Yeah, well, and speaking of childcare, I know you mentioned many families were trying to help their kids via Zoom during this time. And now that we're kind of coming out of that, what does that look like for education going forward for the kids and that even participate in our youth center as well?
Well, I think this was a loss of a year in so many ways. I think growth for all children, not just at the crossing, was deeply impacted and affected by just the lack of that one-on-one time, especially for those children with educational difficulties or learning disabilities, not having that support, and also that disconnection. I think this is hopefully this coming season will be a time of our children being able to re-socialize. Because I feel like being isolated, being away, separated, and also being told that other people might have a disease, it has that kind of impact where we're noticing kids a little more hesitant to engage with other people, even though they're told it's safe. I feel like there's still that fear. So I think we have a counseling program, and we just have a new program where we're going to have more counseling available to the families and children here at STAR. And I feel like we're going to try to really emphasize that, saying take advantage, because this year was a hard year. There was a lot of trauma, a lot of dreams deferred, whether it was your senior year and now you didn't get to do all those things, or just that kind of just feeling alone. Like, we want our children and our families to feel like they have a safe place to process kind of those hurts that happened.
Thank you, John. So can you tell us a little bit about what's happening in the Denver Broncos Youth Center? Yeah,
well, throughout the pandemic, they were still reaching out to the kids, making sure that they were supported. Also trying to do socially distanced activities and crafts where they would have their own station. They did have it open, but just very limited for how many kids could be in the room at the time. So they've been still trying to keep the students here and youth there engaged. We've had a resurgence in teens being involved in our teen nights. So we have teen nights 2 or 3 times a week where kids are coming and processing and just engaging. And we have upcoming summer summer camp that's also coming up, that we're putting them all on a big bus and taking them to the mountains.
That sounds really fun for the kids. Amanda, I was wondering if you could share a story or an anecdote of a New Life program participant or even a graduate who has been with us this last 6 months to a year.
Yeah, we have so many great guys who have really persevered through the pandemic and have come out stronger and even harder working. But one of the things that we emphasize through our program is the importance of community, and they're recovery and long-term stability. And so I have a specific participant who has really grasped that and has made like himself a true community here. So he's worked hard to get connected with the church outside of here, and he's used that to kind of network to plan for his future. And his right now he's working, and he's out there every day, and just dedicated to it. And it's not a job he wants for himself long term, but he's seeing it as a stepping stone to how can I use this to build myself up financially so that I can pursue goals, like peer coaching and supporting others. And he has such a beautiful community here that is helping him find housing, get involved in ministry, helping him reach his personal goals with connecting with his family, who he had some damage just as a result of his addiction. He's really owned that well in the program, and it's been beautiful to see him pursue that recovery with his family, and see that redemption there, even though it may not come in his timeline. And he's just has a passion for helping. So he should graduate in the next couple of months, and his goal is to see how can I come back, how can I support, whether it's the rescue mission or just other people who've walked similar paths to I have. So that's been beautiful to see that our ministry to him has really impacted what he wants to do with his future and the impact that he will have. It's kind of seeing that like effect go on.
Thank you for sharing that. That's so encouraging to hear. I love hearing those stories. You walk alongside our New Life program men every day in your work in case management. What would there be, if there was one thing you would want our viewers today to remember, what would that be?
I just think their humanity. It's so hard. It's so easy to see like statistics or what they've done in the past, but just their ability to still grow, recover, and achieve. They've overcome tremendous barriers, whether it's their criminal backgrounds, childhood trauma, mental health, their struggle with substance abuse, relational barriers. They've really overcome a lot and have poured a lot of work into their becoming who they are today. And so I just think seeing their potential, they do have tremendous potential to be amazing, productive members of our society and of our communities.
That's awesome to hear. Thank you, Amanda. John, I was hoping you could share, a little anecdote or story from one of our STAR participants over this last year.
Sure. One of our families that has been in our program, before coming to us, they were a couple with 3 children, and they were couch surfing with families. A lot of unstable work, kind of underemployed, and also the husband had a felony on his record. Not a violent one, and it did his time, but that is such a barrier nowadays to finding housing, because if you have a felony on your record, a lot of places will not even consider or even look at your application once they see that background. So they moved into STAR, they got assigned a case manager who jumped right up from the get-go, just started jumping and going like, how do we find places and look at places that might, ignore this or consider taking a second chance on you. And also, how do we get you in a better financial position to make you also a better applicant for these places? So eventually they got better jobs, they were able to pay off a lot of debt, they were doing our workshops, they did our counseling, and now we can say like we eventually found a place that was willing to work with them, and they saved about $3,000 to $4,000. So they're leaving in a much better financial position. They did the budgeting classes, our financial courses, so they know how to save money, and they're in a place where they can stay, and that felony is not on their record. And really, STAR is about like how do we give people second chances, and how do we also engage with community partners and see that our participants, just because they've made some mistakes, don't deserve to kind of be ignored and given the same opportunity as other people.
Thank you for sharing that, John. So how can our supporters watching today support both of these incredible programs?
Well, we are just so grateful for just the prayer and support we're currently receiving from our donors and the rest of the community throughout Denver and throughout the world. And we want that continued support and prayer just because we're still in the middle of a pandemic, and we're still trying to navigate housing the New Life program in 2 facilities, and our participants are still trying to figure out employment, whereas we're trying to get out of this recession. So I think continued prayer and thoughts for that. But we also would love volunteers. A lot of volunteers kind of stepped back because didn't know if it was safe. But now their doors are open in our kitchens to help out, and we would love to see those faces again. And our participants love seeing that the community loves and supports them. So we would love to see that. And also, big need is mentors, especially for the men in our New Life program. We need individuals to come alongside them to show them a different world outside of just our program, to show them what healthy relationships look like, healthy marriages, healthy processing. And so that's not just kind of within the Denver Rescue Mission. So if you're interested, and it's not just men, we also need mentors for our youth and for our families as well in the STAR program. So those are kind of our big components we would love to see more people just kind of step up, and I think they'll be just as blessed as they're being blessed as well. Like, I feel like every time I volunteer, every time I come to work, I'm also transformed and changed by our participants because I learned something more about them, about the world, and about the heart of God.
John and Amanda, thank you so much for sharing how the mission is changing lives through our amazing programs. We appreciate you and your team. We want to share with you a special story of one of our recent STAR participants and his journey of finding housing. Here is Roman's story.
We became homeless when my doctor ordered me not to work any longer. And I used to always hear on the television that one paycheck away from being homeless. I never took that seriously. Because I worked all my life. And then when that happened, the rug was like pulled out from under us. And at the same time, I just got custody of my 3 children. So not only was I homeless, but so were they. It was a rude awakening. It was a rude awakening. I found out about the STAR program through the Lawrence Street shelter. I went in and inquired because I knew that they dealt with homelessness, but I wasn't quite sure how they dealt with families. Somebody suggested that I go up and apply, and I got accepted.
One of the wonderful things about our program here is that the participants that we serve also live here, and so that just means that we get to engage with them at the place where they live, and that's honestly a really cool thing.
I developed a little personal, special relationship with the front desk. Caleb is the first one that I talked to about coming into the program, and he followed it all the way through and ended up being my case manager. And I've always felt comfortable with talking with him. And then Sarah, she'll see me and Marcus and she'll stop. Marcus will have a bad day and she'll know it, but Marcus will walk in and she'll let him in her office. That's never happened anywhere. How you doing today? And good morning and inspiration. Them 2 people, yeah, very special.
I was working at the front desk and Roman came up so excited to give me Marcus's school pictures. I still have Marcus's pictures up on my bulletin board today just to remember them and to pray for them.
As a case manager, I'm one of the main supports that participants have while they're here at the crossing. And so I'm their sort of go-to person if they need help with anything financial, anything related to their job, anything going on in their personal life that they need support for. And I'm also there to connect them to resources that they might not have access to here.
Marcus is involved with about 4 different therapies. And Joe, the leader of the youth program, would actually let Marcus and his therapist in the room to take care of what he was doing, be it physical therapy or what, and Marcus and them could use any of the equipment. And it just let me know that I can depend on that and feel secure about doing that. Because I don't feel secure about Marcus going many places. Joe and his staff is very caring. And he knows them. They take the time to get to know each individual child. They just show them love. And that made me feel wonderful, because I could depend on that. And being homeless, sometimes you can't depend on a lot. You cannot depend on a lot. The kids program, it wasn't only for the kids, it was for us. It was for the parents as well, because it gave me an opportunity to go into the computer room and look for housing.
The great thing about Roman finding housing was that it had been from a program that he had applied for a couple of years ago. So he had been on their waiting list for a couple of years, and the STAR program was able to step in and give them housing while they were waiting for that. It's really difficult to explain all the different ways that the pandemic has affected our participants. It's affected their ability to gain and maintain employment, to participate in community, which is really important, and it's even affected their long-term health if they've actually caught COVID. We're also seeing that there's a lot of people who currently aren't being evicted because of the moratorium on evictions, and so that's a problem that's being delayed, but that isn't actually going away. So there's a lot of people that are currently living in places that they actually can't afford. And one day that problem is going to result in places like the Crossing being really necessary.
But the first time I walked in the place, I was just in awe. I was like, oh my goodness. And I also knew that my children are going to be the same way about it. And say it's theirs, and it was just, first of all, it was unreal. Not looking at the place, because that's just a gimme if you look at it, you're able to get it. But when I got the keys and turned the key and opened it and shut the door, I was in tears.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We're glad to bring you these online events every few months in 2021, so you can get an inside look at the mission from the comfort of home and see how your support makes a difference in the lives of those experiencing homelessness. Thank you for all of the ways that you support the mission through financial investment, volunteering, and prayer. We could not do this work without your loyal support. If you would like to learn more about becoming a mentor for any of our programs, we invite you to visit our website to get started. We would love your feedback on today's program. There is a survey link in the chat feature. We look forward to hearing from you. And if you have additional questions or would like to connect with the staff person for more information, please let us know in that survey. Again, thank you for your support of Denver Rescue Mission. Have a wonderful evening.